say the trail was designated from Liverpool to Silver Rock Road?
From the Log Road to the Silver Rock Road is the section that's covered under the current letter of authority.
Where did you get that information from?
From the letter of authority.
I got a picture here, and if you can see, it's way old. And it's in here when it was turned over.
To the province?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it designated that right straight through the Somerville crossing.
Yes. So I'm talking about, I guess, the letter of authority that grants the trail group access to develop the trail. So that section is from the Bog Road just to Silver Rock Road.
Yeah, well, this is dated 91.
Yes. And when the trail was originally purchased by the province, the intent was to develop the whole thing as a recreational trail. But that's obviously not what's happened.
But you did say the Somerville section is actually under the letter of authority.
The Somerville section is designated under the Trails Act. So that means it's designated as a land to become a trail. But the Trails Group doesn't have permission to develop it as a trail without a letter of authority. Okay. And so the most recent letter of authority only covers Silver Rock Road.
But there hasn't been any change in the trail designation under the Trails Act.
No. That has been in place since probably the time of that letter.
Excuse me, when did Parks take over the section
in the provincial park?
Yeah, when did they take that over?
That was tricky because they didn't actually take it, I guess.
They didn't take it over?
Well, they owned it, DNR owned it, and it just became part of the park.
Yeah, the province bought the whole right of way, and the province already had the park, so it just...
Well, where did they come in with the rule that was no motorized vehicles? Apparently, they didn't shut the train through there. Where they come to this rule?
That's a good question. I should look into that.
Yes, look into that.
We'll figure out the dates, yeah. I think that's...
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure if the park was there before the train or the train was there before the park.
That's right, the train was there before.
Apparently, don't they drive into the park?
Yes.
How can they drive into the park?
Because cars are not excluded from provincial parks under the Parks Act, but OHVs are specifically excluded.
All the railroad bridge and the bridges in disrepair. And do you know the minister's concerns for not giving an exemption to go across the bridge?
The bridge in the park or the bridge? Do I know the minister's specific concerns about that? I think
it's just generally it's in the legislation that no OHVs in parks. That's the only concern that we have.
Well, and because it's a beach, OHVs are not allowed on the beach or in beach property.
I just one more question. Like I said, I walked the trail over to Somerville Beach. Now, I noticed there's sections of it that is treed up. Why is that? Is it because they weren't cutting? Or do you know the reason for that?
Well, trail development can't take place unless there's a letter of authority, and the letter of authority ends at Silver Rock Road. So nobody has permission to go and do anything on the land past Silver Rock Road.
I see.
Unless they have individuals.
Yeah, unless they, some of the landowners that are adjacent have individual beautification permits, but that's a different issue. So no, there's no letter of authority permitting trail development from Silver Rock Road to...
So can that landowner take down the fence that the rail bed used to have up and extend your property and just...
A beautification permit doesn't, that's a tricky one. I haven't actually seen a copy of a beautification permit, but it's my understanding from the Department of Natural Resources that a beautification permit allows landowners to make improvements to that area, but it doesn't actually allow them to encroach. It's not their property, it's still the provincial property. Oh. And so at any time the province can come back and do whatever they'd like on that land.
So, as a public person and a taxpayer, and I call that resources like this, I got a right to walk that track.
Well, that's a tricky one because it's trail land, but nobody's allowed to develop it as a trail.
So, yeah, so I bought that track, trees and all. And see, the reason I bought it is because I like to see it developed for everyone to use it.
I think the technical answer is it's not private property, but it's not currently able to be developed as a trail.
So there wasn't
Clear
any,
as mud.
there isn't any possibility that, that once that trail is designated as a trail, goes through the provincial park, then it becomes a park?
The rail bed that goes through the park?
Yeah.
Well, that's different because now it's in the park, and so
So it is park.
it is park, yeah, that rail corridor, I guess, when it's been absorbed into the parkland, so they don't make a distinction between the rail corridor and the parkland. So they're managing it holistically as a park.
I'm interested in your concept of going through the park. If your option to go through the park requires permission for amendment of the Beaches Act or whatever, how do you make that a recommendation? Because the likelihood of that is unknown. So a recommendation with an unknown quality to it becomes quite valueless because the implementability is difficult. So you won't have any guarantees from the provincial government that yes, we're going to amend the Beaches Act to permit this and this beach in the park itself. So that makes the whole Somerville issue quite problematic because it's dependent upon access to the beach and over the railway. Am I mistaken in that regard?
Well, you're a step ahead. It's not a recommendation, it's an option. And so we haven't made a recommendation for how to go through Somerville. So it's an option for consideration for a couple of reasons. There's an existing rail bed. It's been identified to us through our consultation that people want it considered as an option. But when we look at the feasibility of that option, then we have to take into consideration the need to change the legislation or get an exemption from the minister. So that is something that we'll use to evaluate the feasibility of that option.
And if you come to the conclusion that's not likely, what's your options then become?
Well, then we look at one of these other, so that's just through the park. So there's the potential of bypassing Somerville altogether. There's the potential to travel along Highway 3 up to the 103. There's the potential to travel along the rail bed to Highway 3 and go up to the 103. But those are just for the motorized users. As this gentleman pointed out, we could develop that section of trail, continue through as a non-motorized trail, so pedestrians and cyclists and equestrians, and then the motorized traffic bypasses. So there's a number of different factors that come into play.